worrier in the church. And so for the person who has spied the marshmallow that got ground into the carpet, I will clean it up after church. You know, sometimes we need a little something to help us relax, so the marshmallow will be taken care of. Well, I want to, before I start, bring greetings from my church, Community Spirit in Montrose, just 3 years young, and this morning, if I was reading my emails right, their sound system isn't working, so thank heavens they have a nice loud preacher there this morning. I think he'll help them out with that technical difficulty. I want to bring greetings also from the Western Association Church and Ministry Committee that met just yesterday in the library to do the work of the whole United Church of Christ. The Association Church and Ministry Committee bears a kind of responsibility that, if you think about it, might make you not want to serve on that committee because it's pretty awesome. The care of churches and the authorization of ministers on behalf of the whole United Church of Christ. And then also, greetings. I'm going to say greetings to Martha because she serves with me on the board of directors of the Rocky Mountain Conference. But greetings from the whole Rocky Mountain Conference, and a special invite if you are so inclined, go over the mountains on August 20th and be there for a high and holy celebration as Sue Art is installed as our settled conference minister. So that's kind of like how it is at the beginning of one of the epistles. There's like all this greeting, and it comes straight from my heart, and I think it did from Paul as well. But I want to tell you a story from my childhood, and it begins like this. My dad took my brother and me and my brother's best friend Brian and his brother Danny out to the lake on the edge of town. And I have no memory of what we did while we were at the lake. What is seared in my memory is this story of my dad pulling over. They were doing what you couldn't do, what you can't do now, which is ride in the back of the truck and bounce along. But pulls over on this lonely old road, and he says, rolls down the window, and he says, "Get out and go over there and pick that up." And so Danny, who was the oldest and the most agile, leaps over the side of the truck, and he comes back with a slip of something. What was the something? We couldn't wait to find out. It was a $1 bill. And this was 1968. $1 in the hand of a kid was a lot of money. I mean, I hate to say this, but we could get 2 pieces of candy for a penny then. So $1 was like a super jackpot. It was a kind of manna. Well, what a crazy thing. And we get in the truck and we're like, we've got $1 now. And we pull over again. But this time was different. Danny didn't wait. We didn't wait for Dad to roll down the window to tell us what to do. Danny leapt over the side of the truck and he races over and he finds, what did he find? He found another $1. And he comes back and he says, "Look what I found! Look what I found! Look what I found!" My dad, while we were in awe of the second miracle dollar on the side of a road, my dad had gotten out of the truck and come to the back, and he said, "I'll take that." And then he slipped it in his pocket. And he asked for the other $1 too. Stuck it in his other pocket. And then he climbed back into the cab of the truck, and he threw it into gear and pulled out onto the highway, and we rode home, the 4 of us in the back of that truck, in stony silence. Well, when we got home and pulled into the driveway, Dad came around to the back of the truck just like he had did before when he took the money. And he said, my dad wasn't really a lecturer, he's mostly the silent type. He said, "That money, That was for all of you, not one of you. Now let's all go home and think about what happened today. And I still am thinking about what happened that day. What should I do? What should I do? The rich man asked himself as he surveyed his stunning bounty. I have no place to store my crops. I will do this. I will do this. I'm going to pull down my barns and I'm going to build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain, all my goods, all my marshmallows. Be on your guard for all kinds of greed. That's Jesus before he launches into his story. There's a little sneaky word in there. Be on your guard. Be on your guard. He means me. He doesn't mean just the 1%ers of this world. He means me when I'm like Danny. He means me when, true story, the church has a book sale and I go through my huge collection at home and an equally huge selection at church in my office, and I decide which 3 books I will give to the book sale. Then as I go out to the car to set them on the seat to deliver them to the church, I decide that really one of them needs to stay home. Be on your guard, Jesus says, and he means me. He means me when I'm tight-fisted instead of open-hearted. He means me when I hoard praise. He means me when I gather up resentments, building bigger barns for them rather than letting them go. He means me when fear talks me into believing that scarcity rules rather than abundance. Well, I'll just say it. I don't like Jesus being this inclusive. I don't. I want him very badly to point his long, bony finger at the soulless people behind companies like Walmart or Amazon, for whom the barn seems to only be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I want Jesus' parable to be the finger in the chest of every CEO who has ever opted to put the bottom line ahead of environmental responsibility or just equitable pay. That's what I want Jesus to do, but he won't listen. He won't listen to me. He tells a story that is so generous that it includes me. He won't leave me out. This is not just a story about him, the rich farmer, and it's not a story just about them, the fat cats, the 1%ers, the ambitious wheeler-dealers that work in corporate offices with those zillion-dollar views and huge expense accounts and pay in an hour that's more than some people make working for that company in a year. A person can be greedy and yet own next to nothing. A person can hoard and really affect only himself. And if you're not sure you agree, I want to tell you about Jeffrey Sawyer, who decided to walk the back roads of the United States and Mexico, devoting himself to life's deeper questions. Well, when Sawyer set out on his quest, all that he owned, he had given most everything away, he had a backpack. And in that backpack, these were his sole possessions: a mosquito net, a pair of linen pants, I like that, a bathing suit, a blanket, 2 ponchos, because sometimes the rain gets so bad that you need 2, a fleece jacket, a hat, One long sleeve t-shirt, or long sleeve shirt, 2 regular t-shirts, a pair of socks, some matches, and then a little bit of flour and a little bit of salt. His source of transport, his sandaled feet. As he journeyed through the United States and Mexico, Mr. Sawyer carried no ATM card, no credit card, and no tent. Most of the time, he didn't even have a sleeping bag. On the rare occasion that he had any money at all, it was scarcely more than $30. Even with so little, a person can be afflicted by greed. And in Mr. Sawyer's case, it wasn't money, and it wasn't possessions, it was something else. And if you can guess what the something else is, I will give you $100. You're not going to guess what it is. Any guesses? What was the source of his greed? Walking along the roadway on a day that he said had been ugly and had gone wrong in 100 different ways, 10 long and lonely miles to the next town, Mr. Sawyer realized he had nothing to eat. And that awareness only heightened his fatigue and only added kerosene to his worries. Which causes me to say, sometimes, oftentimes, the seed of greed is need. That was true for him. And here's how that seed got planted in Mr. Sawyer's adventure. While he was resting, I try to think of it as he's recovering from this horrible, horrible day and kind of gathering himself together to face what he doesn't want to face, which is his hunger, his distance from town, all these different things. He's there resting, and he looks over, and he spies an enormous patch of wild mushrooms that were famous for their deliciousness. So he pulls out his pocket knife, and he starts hacking away, and he gathers up all of these mushrooms, and he says to himself, this will be a fine, fine feast. But while he's harvesting this great amount of mushrooms, worry about the next day overtakes him. What if he's hungry again tomorrow? What if that day turns out to be worse than this one had been? Well, he told himself, better harvest more mushrooms because he might have need of them. So he gathers all this up and shoves it down into his backpack, and he sets out again. And as he makes his way, he finds, miracle of miracles, not only a fire pit, but wild onions. He said later that this humble, humble dinner was as delicious as the finest marinated chicken. So that fork or fingers, whatever it was, I don't know, he didn't say he had a fork, I don't know how he was eating, but he's gathering these up and he's eating and eating and eating, and his belly grows more and more taut from his forest feast. And he decides that he would need lots of energy for the tough hike ahead. So he looks down at all these mushrooms and he decides, I'm just going to cook them all. I'm going to cook them all. I might not have fire tomorrow. They might go bad between now and the next day. So he cooked them all, and then he took a bag and he jammed it full of the surplus, and he tied that bag of cooked mushrooms to his pack, and he continued on. But now, Jeffrey Sawyer was bloated. And he was feeling a little sick to his stomach, and his pack, it was lopsided, and it was heavy as he made his way uphill. The next day, guess what he had for breakfast? And what did he have for lunch? But he wasn't hungry, and especially not for mushrooms. The day before, they had tasted heavenly. Now they tasted like duty. D-U-T-Y. Greed is such a sad thing. Sad not because it drives us to reprehensible and selfish acts, lacks, which it oftentimes does, but it's sad, greed is ours, not someone else's, because it has us forget so much. How abundance is the thread that God uses to stitch everything together. How we're never left entirely to our own devices, even if our fears or our frameworks say otherwise. Greed has us forget that there really is no such thing as a self-made man or a self-made woman. If you were listening carefully to that lesson from Luke, you heard a little sneaky clue. It was the land that was abundant. The land was abundant. The rich man was not the creator of his wealth. He was the recipient of something great. And yet, how quickly he congratulated himself for all that he had done to become so prosperous. A prosperity that pointed to bigger barns and probably an early and opulent retirement. But it never occurred to him, with all that had been given to him, it never occurred to him to lift his eyes up off that bountiful harvest to catch a glimpse of the fence line and the needs just beyond it. And he never did, at least in the way that Jesus told the story, he didn't tip his head back and let out a song of praise either to a God whose generosity had found its way into his field and into his life. He forgot. The farmer did. He forgot. So do we. Whether we travel in the back of a pickup truck on a summer's day, or by personal jet, or by sandaled foot. What the rich man forgot, and what we are so prone to forgetting, is what the Sufi poet Rumi put so elegantly. Your lamp was lit from another lamp. You didn't create your fire yourself. When I was younger and didn't know anything, I'm older and don't know anything, but when I was younger and didn't know anything, I had the audacity to credit myself for my academic and professional accomplishments. I had been a bootstrapper. I applied myself in school, I put myself through school, and then once I landed a wonderful job on campus, I worked hard, and I proved myself to be a valued staff member. And for that, by some miracle, I had gotten promoted fairly regularly. I was alone in my good fortune and my accolades. It was me. It was my doing. I had gotten where I had gotten on my own steam. Sort of like the farmer who looked at his plenty and said, I'm doing so well. The future's so bright, I need shades. It never occurred to me then that my lamp had been lit by other lamps. I grew up in a family that loved education. Of course I was going to college. My mother had taken me to the library every week forever, which ties into my hoarding of books now. I'm creating my own library, and maybe one day I'll give away more than 2 books. Just like it never occurred to that farmer that he had been graced with rich soil and sufficient rain and plentiful sun. Just like it never occurred to Danny that much of the credit for the dollar bill he was waving in our faces that second time wouldn't go to him, even though he claimed that he had found it. After we got home that day, after Danny and Brian shuffled home empty-handed, I think their heads were hanging down, my dad took my brother and me aside and he made a confession. And he said, I was going to divide all that up among the 4 of you equally. I wonder, he asked, what each of you could have gotten at the Frosty Freeze for 50 cents. which was a lot then. And we, my brother and I, imagined the possibilities of standing at the window at the Frosty Freeze with 50 cents, each of us and all of us. It's a question not unlike that farmer's harvest. What could you have done if you had shared? What would have happened? What would have been the harvest of joy? I've thought about that story many times. And the invitation to share what has been so generously placed in our lives, not our own effort. I mean, it didn't take a kid jumping over the side of a truck to grab that. Not even my father could take the credit for the dollar. Where did that come from? Both of them. Our lives are full of generosity. And you follow that thread and you'll never find the end. Because it's just, our lives are heaped with generosity upon generosity. It's only our framework and our fears that cheat us of realizing that. What this morning is Jesus, your source, asking you to share? We're all being asked to share all the time. We just have to notice. What is yours that really isn't yours? What lamps are you being invited to light? What abundance are you being invited to trust? What self-made self are you being asked to set aside so that your true giftedness can shine? Ask those questions and offer you an invitation to reflect for a moment. What are you being asked this morning? You, the recipient of so much abundance, an abundance of love that's made you rich, forgiveness that's given you infinite freedom, and the very presence of a God who is with you now and forever. We need not fear. Everything we need, we have. Let us spend a